My fellow comrades, fellow Southern Cameroonians, good morning and hearty greetings from a very cold and wintry South Africa. Today, the 14th of July 2024, I will be doing a presentation on the most recent survey that was conducted by the Southern Cameroons Alliance. The Alliance last month in June conducted a survey on how stakeholders in the Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, perceive the state of the liberation struggle till date and what direction the struggle should take going forward. The survey was open to all Southern Cameroonians, regardless of their political affiliation, political conviction, religious, and as well as regardless of their origin. This survey was prompted by several factors, including the lack of a visible Ambazonian strategy for a post-Biya Cameroon. It was also to look at this multiplication and factionalization of groupings in our liberation struggle and the urgent need to regroup, to re-strategize and re-energize the liberation struggle. These 5 key factors were quite central to the reason why the Alliance decided to conduct this survey. But also importantly is the fact that it had been quite a while since the last survey was conducted. You may recall that in 2019, the late Cardinal Tumi led a survey that looked at the state of the conflict in Cameroon, therefore concerning the 2 Cameroons, trying to understand the perception of the people, but also to gauge exactly where the people stood vis-a-vis the various political leanings. According to the survey, 69% of the people favored a complete and separated Southern Cameroons from La République du Cameroun, favoring an independent nation. The following year, in 2020, the Coalition for Dialogue and Negotiations, CDN, also conducted a survey. This was in October 2020. And the reason for this was to gauge the aspirations of Southern Cameroonians on key aspects of their homeland. Similar to the Tumi survey, 86% of respondents chose full and independent Southern Cameroons, while 7% chose to be in a federal system. 4% were in favor of a confederation, kind of a loose relationship between La République du Cameroun and the Southern Cameroons, and only 1% actually stood for a government-sponsored special status. During the survey of the CDN, 38% of the respondents were actually based in Cameroon. So 38% both in the Southern Cameroons and in La République du Cameroun, while 23% of the respondents were in the US, 7% in the UK, 6% in Nigeria, 4% in Canada, South Africa had 3%, the United Arab Emirates with 3%, and of course there were other countries with less. 3 years later, the Southern Cameroons Alliance has decided to conduct another study. And this is largely because, evidently, after 3 years, a lot must have changed. So, the survey starts with the age of the respondents. And as you can see from the pie chart, the vast majority of the respondents were aged between 50 to 58. With 29.8%. So that's almost 30% of the respondents. This was followed by the 41 to 49 age group with 21%, and then followed by the 59 to 65%, 65 age group with 16.2%, and by the over 65 with 15.2%. Then, of course, there is the 30 to 40 age group with 12.1%. This basically indicates that the respondents were basically older people. The 50 to 58 seem to be the most active, most present, most committed in the struggle at this point. And the next question, which talked about the level of education, you would notice that the majority of the respondents were holders of master's degrees with 29.7%. Not very different from the 50 to 58 age group with 29.8%, basically the same percentage, which begins to give the impression, or at least to me, that this might also be the group, the 50 to 58 age group might also be linked to those with a master's degree. This was closely followed by people with an undergraduate degree or a bachelor's degree at 25%. And thirdly, by holders of a PhD or doctorate degree at 13.6%. So between these two, the master's degree, the undergraduate and the PhD, we are looking at approximately 65 or more percentage of the respondents of this survey. Of course, you have others, those who preferred not to say, the high school leavers and so on, with something between 5 to 7%. Now, in terms of the location of the respondents, you would notice that the biggest piece of the pie goes to the United States with 26%. This is closely followed, well, not closely, but followed by Europe with 19.4%, by La République du Cameroun with 18.2%, and by the Southern Cameroons Ambazonia territory with 17.8%. But when you combine both the figures in La République and the Southern Cameroons, it brings you to approximately 35% or so, 36, which is not very different from the figures of the CDN in 2020. The US has increased from 23% in 2020 to 26.1%. And Europe, in the case of this survey, did not distinguish between the different countries. And so Europe as a bloc had 19.4%. Then, of course, you had others like Nigeria, South Africa, and Ghana with something like 5-6% each. The next question basically asked about the citizenship of, no, not the citizenship, but in terms of the, are you an indigenous citizen of the Southern Cameroons? Basically, it's one or more of your parents, one or both parents of Southern Cameroons origin. The vast majority of the respondents were yes. They answered yes at 98.7%. How do you identify yourself with respect to the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle? 65.8% identify themselves as being Ambazonian. 23.1% identify themselves as Southern Cameroonians. 5% identify as Anglophones, and 3.2% identify as a Cameroonian. So the next question basically asks, when did you first become aware that there was a Southern Cameroonian liberation struggle? You would see that the 25% say they became aware of this in the 1990s with the formation of the Cameroon Anglophone movements. This is 25%. Then you have 21% in the 80s when Fongoji Dinka declared the Republic of Ambazonia. You have 17.9% in the 2000s with the SCNC, in the 2000s with the SCNC and UNO State of the Southern Cameroons, when they were distributing tracts. And you have the 70s with the late Albert Mukong, when he was imprisoned. This was during the Ahijo era. And finally, you have 12.1% who only became aware of this struggle after 2016 with the Coffin Revolution. Now, many different reasons have been put forward as to why there is a Southern Cameroons liberation struggle. In your opinion, which of the following best describes why Southern Cameroonians are fighting for liberation? In answer to this, you have 29% who say the Southern Cameroonians are an indigenous people and have the right to self-determination. The second biggest group with 20.2% say Southern Cameroonians are entitled to independence, and the UK and the UN botched that independence. The third major group with 19.6% say Southern Cameroonians are marginalized in Cameroon and treated as second-class or third-class citizens. The next is the one with 12.2% who say Southern Cameroons was in a union with La République, but they exited because La République violated this union. And of course, you have the smaller ones, 7.7%, the United Kingdom as a trusteeship, as a trustee of the former British Cameroons, illegally ceded the territory to La République. And the last major category, which is the 7.4%, arguing that Southern Cameroons was never in a union with La République, and so obtained its independence due to that fact. Now, the next question asks, what is your involvement, if any, in the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle? The majority, at 33.3%, state that I am deeply involved and support initiatives that can lead to sovereignty or full independence. The second major group, with 23.6%, say, I am a sympathizer and support selected initiatives that can lead to sovereignty or full independence. The third major group, with 21.2%, state that I am deeply involved and support initiatives that can lead to sovereignty. And then the third major group, with 15.8%, say I am partially involved, while the last category of respondents say I am not involved. So they, even though they are not involved at all, they responded. Of course, there are others who prefer not to say. Then the next question was, which of the following organizations involved in the struggle have you heard of or are you familiar with? This one, you would notice that basically everybody has heard of almost every group, and there are a plethora of groups and plethora of mixes of groups. You will see at the very bottom of the slide that in spite of all these different mixes, for instance, at the very beginning with 5.8%, you would see the Southern Cameroons National Council, the Southern Cameroons People's Organization, the Ambazonia Governing Council, the Southern Cameroons Conference, and so on. It's 5.8%. But it's basically a mix. In spite of that and the different groupings and combinations, you still have 176 more combinations, which in my opinion is a clear indication of how divided and stratified we are. The analysis of this will be fleshed out a bit more in the report itself. The same holds for this one as well. Which of the following organizations involved in the struggle are you affiliated with? You would notice that 17.9% of the respondents, they are affiliated with the interim governments of the Republic of Ambazonia, made up of IG Care, IG Sako, IG Anu, and IG Marianta. Whereas 7.2% are affiliated or are members of the Southern Cameroons National Council, the SCNC. Interestingly, of the 17.9% who are basically 18% who identify with the different interim governments, when you then break it down, as you see in other questions that further, where you say you pick out one of the different factions of the IG and say, which of these do you belong to? None of the IGs actually come up with more than 2%. So there seems to be a rallying cry around the IG in a combined manner, but alone, none of the IG actually come close to the SCNC, which we found to be very, very interesting. Now, the next question, do you envisage a scenario where Southern Cameroons achieves a military victory over La République? 38.3% think that it's possible. 18.5% think that it is likely. Possible and likely, very much the same, combined is a big, big chunk of the population that believe that a military victory over La République du Cameroun is possible. 17.8% think it's unlikely. And 17.8% think, or they are not sure. So these are the four major categories. And this tells you that very, very much there is a strong belief that by the vast majority that a military victory is possible. We all look forward to the final report to see the provenance. Where are these different respondents based? Because when you look at the comments, and this you will see at the end of this presentation, those who are based in the diaspora tend to have a point of view that is that's not necessarily the same point of view of those who are based on the territory. So those who strongly believe in a military victory, are they based in the diaspora or are they based on the ground with the people? These are the questions that we should be asking as we look at this. How do you see the struggle concluding in the long term? That's the next question. 77.7% see or believe that the only conclusion, the most logical conclusion, is the complete independence of the Southern Cameroons Ambazonia. 9.4% believe in a loose confederation of semi-autonomous Southern Cameroons, while 7.4% prefer that we return to the pre-72 arrangement between La République and Southern Cameroons. Now, of course, this in lots of ways is a reflection, not very different from the previous surveys and where people see themselves. What is the wish of the people and the opinion and the wishes of the vast majority of our people? Next question, how do you quantify the current level of engagement and support for the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle? 40.6% think that it has decreased drastically. That's the level, the current level of engagement and support has decreased drastically. 33.4% think that it has decreased somewhat. Combined between these two, we're looking at approximately 73% of our people who believe that the support and engagement to the struggle has decreased. 11% actually think that the support has increased significantly, while 6.5% think that it has not changed at all. Now, how would you quantify the current level of engagement and support for the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle? Level of support and engagement. Quantification. If it has decreased, then how do you quantify it? Again, it has decreased somewhat at 34. No, it has decreased drastically at 43.5. It has decreased somewhat by 34.3, very much the same as the previous question. And it has not changed at 7.8%, while you have, it has increased significantly at 6.5%. So same question tweaked In a different way, same results more or less. How does the existence of so many groups impact how the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle is progressing? 42.6% think that it does a lot of harm to the struggle, while the 33.3% say it slows down the struggle, but the struggle is still on. Very much the same reflection of the past two questions. 9% think that it slows down the struggle, but the struggle is still on, while 8.3% think that it helps the struggle by providing many options. Next question, do you believe there is need for a new structure or a reduction or dissolution of some Southern Cameroons liberation groups? 77.9% strongly believe it is necessary to dissolve and restructure or bring up a new structure for liberations. 10.3% don't believe it is necessary, while 11.9% are neutral. The next question asks, how do you think the leadership of the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle should emerge? 73.1% think that it should be based on competency and who can set up. It is based on competency and who can set up a functional organization to actually take up the liberation struggle. That's the perception or the position of 73.1%. 14% say it should be based on who is available and is able to sacrifice their time, resources, and effort to move the struggle forward. So those are basically the two key tenets of how the people perceive how leadership should emerge moving forward. What do you believe should be the primary area of focus for the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle? So we start from 29%. 29% believe that self-defense and community mobilization is the best approach. 9% believe that diplomacy should be prioritized, while 8.4% believe that advocacy should be prioritized. 44.1% believe that all three should be combined and used simultaneously. How will a change in leadership in La République du Cameroun affect the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle? 56% believe that it will depend on how prepared the leadership of the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle is prepared to take advantage of the situation. 21% think that it will have no impact on the struggle. 8% think it will impact the struggle positively, while 7.7% is not sure as to how it will impact the struggle at all. Do you believe that a partnership with adversaries, enemies of the regime in La République du Cameroun can assist in the Southern Cameroons quest? 35.4% think it's a bad idea to partner with adversaries or enemies of La République. 23.7% think it's a good idea. 22.8% think it makes no difference, while 13.6% just do not know. What role can a referendum play in resolving the Southern Cameroons conflict and bring a conclusion to the liberation struggle? 67.9%, that's 68%, believe that a referendum can solve the issues if it is supervised by the UN and the international community. 12.8% believe that a referendum cannot resolve the issues between the two Cameroons, while 9.9% believe that a referendum is a good idea if it can be agreed upon by all sides, irrespective of who supervises it. At the end of the survey, we asked respondents to indicate if they prefer correspondence via email or via WhatsApp. Interestingly, 70% prefer to get their correspondence through emails, while only 30% prefer WhatsApp, which we found quite strange and interesting because we had expected it to be the reverse. Now, we now move to some of the comments about the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle, or any other thoughts on how it should progress. So we concluded by asking other questions. Do you have any comments about the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle, or any thoughts on how it should progress? And we got some interesting feedback. So one person said, good. Some questions seem irrelevant, like those about dissolving other organizations. How is this going to be enforced? Very good question. Somebody said, the only comment, pay your liberation tax. That's all they're interested in. The third said, foster some degree of unity in a collaborative platform, bringing the leaders to debate, discuss, and take decisions concerning the struggle. That's the best way forward now. Somebody else said, make more and better liaison with Ground Zero. And then there was, we need unity of the groups in the diaspora and also the forces on Ground Zero. We need to start a serious fundraising scheme worldwide. There were more comments which said different groups should at least tolerate each other if they can't cooperate. Infighting and disunity are killing the struggle. Someone else said, free the 10 incarcerated leaders, then make them tour the Northwest and the Southwest regions. Someone said, my advice is just to be focused and avoid side distractions or cheap propaganda. Our liberation forces should target more of the enemy than our people. And finally, on this slide, the person said the groups should come together, choose a general leader of the struggle, but still maintaining their sub-leaders. They can strategize and seek advice from the 3 French countries that flushed out France from Africa. Also, let group leaders advise soldiers to protect, not harass the Ground Zero population who are already going through a lot of hardship. Then there were comments, the struggle is not God ordained. You cannot put asunder what God has put together. The level of killings and mayhem shows the Ambazonian state will be a no-go zone. If by error you had independence. Together, let's build Cameroon in its rich cultural diversity and enjoy the benefits together. Somebody else said the greatest need of this struggle right now is an elaborate plan and strategy capable of reawakening and motivate the people of Ambazonia to take back their role as owners and sponsors of the struggle. The ongoing war needs to be considered exclusively as the irrevocable and unavoidable replacement of the struggle. This is because any way forward in this conflict shall be determined by the outcome of the war. The world is only going to support our quest for statehood and sovereignty if we start making strides at the war front. Note should be taken of the fact too that if Yaoundé can actually crush us, impose total desolation on our territory, then the world is going to prefer it for a zone of an everlasting warfare. More comments. The leaders should drop 2 very bad attitudes: mudslinging and individualism, and the better than thou attitude. They should and must start working in synergy. Division among the leaders had caused far more harm to the struggle than the LRC has done, because La République simply turns us against one another and then sits back and enjoys us killing ourselves. Somebody else said, roadblock for years, tax on people who have nothing to eat, fighting amongst yourself. What you call blacklegs should not be killed. And the other said, change of strategy will help the struggle. Someone said, it's been hijacked by hoodlums, and the killing as senseless as the revolution is eating up its own. And finally, someone said scammers need to be stopped before the struggle is completely sold out. The last slide on comments, you have somebody who said The soldiers on the ground should stop harassing the people they are fighting for. We are in La République not because we are comfortable here, but because of the harassment and brutality we have gotten from our children who are soldiers. We want to go back home, but are scared because of what we have gone through. The leaders should define the reason for the struggle to the boys. Education, political education. The next person said leadership, 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 basically. Next, identify yourself. You are either a Southern Cameroonian, you are either Southern Cameroons or Ambazonia. Switching between both Southern Cameroon and Ambazonia signals identity crisis. And finally, all Southern Cameroons Ambazonian citizens should join their LGA and mobilize funds to fight for their freedom. God is on our side. Shalom. Now, we also try to analyze a bit of who was where based on how they came across. And I think I'd mentioned before that when you look at who is strongly in favor of war and saying that the only solution is military, it's important also to look at where they are based. So we try to look at the location of the respondents, and we found that those in the diaspora seem or tend to have a particular kind of lingo. You take, for instance, these four contributions from the diaspora. One say, continue with economic sabotage and guerrilla tactics. Person based in the UK. The second said, more boots on the ground for a gunboat type of diplomacy with the international community, based in Europe. The person did not specify the country. The third one said, continue with economic sabotage and guerrilla tactics, UK-based. I think this is a repetition. And finally, one of them said, indigents of Southern Cameroons are demoralized because some of the armed groups are harassing them. If the issue of armed groups terrorizing the masses is resolved, I think we have a chance. It is imperative that the leadership be cleansed and get ready to seize any opportunity as the change in La République is imminent. Somebody based in Nigeria. But then again, you can tell this person is in the diaspora. Their way of looking at things differs significantly from those in overseas countries. Those based on ground zero. The leaders should take time to educate the Ambazonian Defense Forces to know how to interact with the population. Their actions are getting on the nerves of the people who are supposed to be protected by them. Ground zero. The main stakeholders involved in the struggle should adopt a more humane approach towards Ambazonians and avoid too many senseless killings of Ambazonians, destruction of their property, and especially those involved in kidnappings for ransom. Ground zero. The Amber Boys have made life very difficult for those on ground zero, which has negatively impacted the struggle. People now feel more comfortable with the soldiers, with Cameroon military than with the boys who initially were looked upon as liberators. And finally, in this slide, though we condemn La République for the atrocious acts, I would like the separatist fighters to show some restraint in violence towards their own and innocent people, be they Southern Cameroonians or La République. Now, on the next slide, we also looked at the different respondents. Not everybody who responded was for complete independence, was an independentist, was a federalist, and so on. There were different interest groups participating. So this is evidently the contribution of somebody who stands for One Cameroon and who's strongly for the special status. The person says, we prefer our union with La République than the barbarism from Amba. Our partnership with Francophone opposants. We are all one people. Or on the partnership on Francophone opposants, the person says, we are one people. On independence, this person says, we prefer our union with La République than the barbarism from Amba. The person prefers that we work for a better special status. This person is based in La République. is an indigenous Ambazonian, but identifies as a Cameroonian. He or she also argues that all reasons for the cause of the conflict that are being advanced are false. Maintains that Cameroon is one and indivisible. We should improve on governance and curb down on corruption. Apart from the SCNC that was banned, the rest are criminal syndicates created to extort money from innocent Anglophones in exchange for fake dreams of independence. And finally, this person argues that the people are sick and tired of mayhem and barbarism on them by the same people who pretended to liberate them. Now, we also did have some federalist participation. You have this one who has a preference for a pre-1972 type federation between Cameroon, or between the Southern Cameroons, Ambazonia, and La République. The person also is neutral when it comes to the question of, do you believe there is need for a new structure or a reduction of or dissolution of some Southern Cameroons liberation groups? The person is neutral because, of course, they are not involved in the independencies or the direct liberation struggle. Finally, in terms of their comments, the person says, yes, I pray for a younger person to take over and unite Cameroon. So somebody that's not as old as Mr. Biya is their hope for Cameroon. When we launched this survey, we got some feedback from various interest groups. One of them was that there are fears that the survey is going to be infiltrated and people of La République were going to come in and try to take over the narrative and push in order to distort the result of the survey. We took into consideration this as a possibility and put in place mechanisms for being able to identify any such potential infiltrators. So this is one of such participants which we found, and this was not the only one, but one of the very interesting ones. This person is based in La République du Cameroun, French-speaking Cameroon, but the person argues that they are an indigenous citizen of the Southern Cameroons, and they go ahead to say, I am an Ambazonian. They got to know about the struggle as far back as the 80s when Gorgi Dinka declared the Republic of Ambazonia. In answer, they said the Southern Cameroons was in a union with La République du Cameroun, but they exited due to the violation of the terms of the union, which happened by the presidential decree of 1984. They also say, I am deeply involved and support initiatives that can lead to sovereignty and full independence. So this person claims to be an Ambazonian, is of Ambazonian extraction, is deeply involved in the struggle, and supports any initiative, has been aware of this since the 80s. However, they are aware of the interim governments in place. Do you envisage a scenario where the Southern Cameroons achieves a military victory over La République? The person says possibly. They believe in complete independence of Southern Cameroons. But then they think that the current situation of the struggle, how do you quantify the current level of engagement? They say that it has increased significantly. Now, how do you quantify the current level of engagement and support for Southern Cameroons liberation struggle? This person says it has not changed. The level of support since 2017 or between 2017 and 2019 has not changed. It remains the same. How does the existence of so many groups impact how the Southern Cameroons liberation struggle is progressing? The person says it has little influence since there is now a full-fledged government of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia managing the struggle. Question, do you believe there is need for a new structure or a reduction or dissolution of the different groups? The person says, I don't believe it is necessary. Do you believe that a partnership with adversaries of La République can assist the struggle? The person says, I think it's a bad idea. A referendum is not acceptable in the present revolution because the people of Ambazonia have already declared their independence. Actualization campaign. Referendum will mean participating in the internal business of La République. This person goes ahead to actually give their phone number when it is asked. In terms of any other comments, they say, let it continue as it is. How do you think leadership of the Southern Cameroons Liberation struggle should emerge? The person says the government is already managing the revolution. So the responses are so contradictory. It is not clear if this is probably, especially because this person says they are based in La République, they furnish their phone numbers and everything, but still very contradictory responses. Could it be this is somebody who is already part of the different government, interim government factions, who is doing everything to defend their faction, or is it in fact an agent of La République trying to infiltrate? These were the questions we asked ourselves, but just to tell you that we paid attention to these things. And so in conclusion, consistent with previous surveys, the overwhelming majority of Southern Cameroonians and Ambazonians still feel strongly that independence is the only solution to the conflict. In spite of the hardship on ground zero and in exile, many have not wavered in their conviction. Interestingly, the SCNC came out very strongly in terms of support, perhaps linked to the age group that participated. When one looks at the age groups and the awareness of the struggle, that is people from between 50 to 58 and then 65, and their level of education, and also linked to the fact that when you ask them when they became aware of the struggle or got involved, you see that many of them were sometime in the 80s and the 90s. Then it makes a lot of sense also why perhaps the SCNC came out very strong, with perhaps the single movement with the most support in terms of percentage throughout this survey. This is the end of the presentation I'm making, and we will be coming back to you not too long from now with a more detailed report that will be presented and published by the Secretariat of the Southern Cameroons Alliance. Thank you very much. I thank you for your kind attention. Like I had mentioned, this survey will be very instrumental in informing the path that the Southern Cameroons Alliance will follow in the coming months. And we hope that it also is informative and instrumental to the different groupings, actors, and stakeholders of our liberation struggle. We will, as soon as the result is out and shared, we will be reaching out to a number of stakeholders to start paving the way, given the urgency of the situation and the need for us to be able to prepare ourselves, be on standby, have a strategy, have a game plan with the very fast and rapid political evolution which directly impacts our liberation struggle. We thank you very much, and I thank you for your kind attention.